janefinch.com.
It's your girl Butterfly reporting on May Day event hosted by Jane and Finch Action Against Poverty here at Driftwood Community Centre. An event we've been hosting for many years in the neighborhood, looking at job equality, good jobs, safe jobs, really pushing for the 15 in fairness campaign, Raise the Rates, really fighting for income security and justice in our neighborhood. There was a film screening, a panel discussion of residents who've been doing some of this work, and a report back on the work that's been happening around, in particular, temp agencies in this neighborhood. What brings you here tonight at this May Day celebration in Finch?
Just being interested in things that are going on in my community, and definitely interested in any issues that have to do with work and finding stable work and permanent work for people, and talking to other people about what they're noticing going on, and just trying to figure out what is going on in this world and trying to find a way out, you know? So, yeah.
Do you think that this event, in terms of what's happening with the work industry, does it make sense to ground a conversation like this in a community like Jane and Finch, and why?
I definitely think it makes sense to bring this conversation into the community, because I find a lot of times things happen, and as individuals we think, not that we're special, but we think it's just happening to us based on our own kind of individual experiences and past and that sort of stuff. And so I think it's really eye-opening for people to see that it's a bigger system going on, that it affects a lot more people than just yourself, that it's systemic, and then kind of having that sense that it's not, that you're not alone, gives it makes you feel better. And then it also, if we're coming up with solutions, it always, more heads are better than one. So it always helps to see that, okay, this is happening to a bunch of people, talking about how it came about and how to find solutions. I think this is definitely the place to do it, because I feel like we're, if not the hardest hit community, definitely one of the hardest hit community, you know, by the instability in the workforce and these temp jobs and everything that's going on. I know personally this is affecting me, so I know it's affecting other people in our community. So definitely, yeah, we need to bring it home. Yeah.
So there's a number of pieces of work that Jane and Finch Action Against Poverty has been doing over the past couple of years. One of the things that we found around temp agency is that there's more than like 200 in the neighborhood, from Steeles to Wilson to Keel to past Weston Road.
Right.
What do you think when I say something like that to you? What do you think about that?
I think exploitation. I think that, you know, these companies know that there's a large immigrant population in Jane and Finch. They know that, you know, and with immigrant population, I feel like I have to dispel some of the myths that people have about immigrant population. I know immigrant population is hardworking, doesn't cause a lot of trouble, because, you know, we're grateful for the opportunities we have, because it's different from what we might have had back home. In some cases, it's not better, you know, it's worse, but we're just, in cases where it's worse, it's like you're just happy that you're finally getting an opportunity, because I know a lot of immigrants come here and they might have come with their degrees and their diplomas and all this stuff, and they can't get work here. So when you have somebody come in, like you've been here for a year or two, and you finally realize, oh, my credentials don't have any impact here, and somebody comes and offers you a job, any job, you're so grateful that you're not going to mess it up. Mm-hmm. You're going to show up to work on time. You're going to work extra hard. You're going to work extra shifts. You're not going to complain to management about safety issues or whatever that a native-born Canadian might do, because they feel that entitlement that a lot of immigrants don't feel. So they know that they can exploit us, because they know we're going to work hard, and then we're not going to cause a fuss, and we're going to take whatever little crumbs they give us, and we're going to keep it moving. And we will do that for years. My aunt worked at a job for 10 years as a temp agent, you know, working through a temp agency. And when she finally got a job permanently with that company, she got laid off within 2 years. You know, and so it's this thing of like, they know they can take advantage of us, and they know that there's a constant stream of labor, of sweat coming through. So I think that's why it's concentrated in these areas. And hearing that just makes me feel sick and angry and frustrated and all these things, but it's the reality, right? So, yeah.
Thank you so much for you sharing your story, especially with your aunt, in terms of just how complicated it is, right? Like, here's your aunt, 10 years, no benefits, no sick days. That's impossible. No security, given that security, but to be taken away. Yeah. So it's definitely systemic, and the connection with race and class, I think, is
absolutely. You know, and it's one of those things where, again, I think that's why having an event like this and looking around the room and seeing our faces reflected, it makes it, because I know a lot of racialized communities. As much as I feel like I'm so excited for the younger community coming up, because I find that they're the ones that are likely to see stuff and point out and be like, hey, that's racist, that's classist, that's sexist, that's whatever, all these things. Because I know my generation and older generation, we don't tend to we don't want to be pointing the finger. We don't want to be troublemakers. You know what I mean? Like, we all came to this country and we, I'm going to say have internalized this message of being the good ones. You know what I mean? Like, we have the pressure from home of being the ones that got out to make it. We have the pressure from being here of like not making our community look bad and that sort of stuff. And I'm really excited, and I feel like it's creating a fire in me to not care about these images when I see the youth coming up and they're frustrated, and I don't want them to go through what I went through or what my mom and my aunt went through. I don't want them to have to struggle when I know that there is no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. I know that the lie that we're being told about just being quiet and working hard and going along with the system is not going to produce security, is not going to produce stability, is not going to produce a fat paycheck and a better life for our families. So I'm like, if what we need to do is shake up this whole system, whatever that looks like I honestly don't know. So I'm looking to the youth for direction. I'm like, what do you guys want to do? What do you think we need to do? Whatever it is you need to do, I have experience, I have resources, I have ideas. Let's all get together and do this, because we have nothing to lose. We have nothing to lose because we have nothing to gain. None of this is built for us, and none of this takes our needs into account. So whatever we have to do to center ourselves, let's do it. Let's do it. This is the time. Like, I feel like the world is ending, so let's get ours before it's all gone, right?
Ours. I like that. Okay. Yeah. And what are you doing here? Why are you here?
For the food, honestly. I don't really care about the workers or anything along those lines. Really. Kidding. I'm here to perform great positive music and bring a great energy and vibe to the room and celebrate for all the workers that are out there working. Okay. Yeah.
Why? So what's your thought on an event like this, looking at workers' rights? And in particular, the film is looking at a young person, 21, first day on the job, who also dies on the job. How does that connect to you as a young person who's working and also gearing up for full-on workforce?
Well, I really like this event because I really feel like people like this need to be celebrated, and I don't feel like workers are celebrated enough. And I think we really need to fight for justice and, you know what I'm saying, all that good stuff and all that positive stuff, because it's definitely needed in this type of society, because the media does not show enough attention to the good that happens in Finch or even outside of Finch or even for the good in workers in general. So I love events like this, and I love JaneandFinch.com for always, showing the beautiful side of Jane and Finch, because they love to make us look bad.
So what brings you here to Driftwood Community Centre?
I was here for the event to watch the movie and kick back with a couple of friends.
Do you live in the neighborhood?
Yeah, I do.
And you're gearing up to get into the workforce. As a young person in Jane and Finch, what kind of work opportunities are there for you here?
I would say there's just about anything, but the cost of living in Toronto even is ridiculous, and minimum wage is just not even, it's not cutting it to live in Toronto and be on your own. You either have to share a room, you have to find groceries, bus fare, whatever it is, it's just not cutting it. Even with full-time work and to go to school, it's a lot. It's a lot of haggling.
So how do you feel as a young person knowing this and walking into this work job force?
I feel trapped. I feel like it's going to be the 40-year rule where by the time I get out of university, barely have time to have kids and have a life outside of working just to survive. And I feel like work is not living anymore. It's not enjoying your life as it is. It's trying to survive on a daily basis, whether it's to get from point A to point B. It's it's just hard. It's really hard to make it out.
Are you talking about this to your friends and stuff? Is this something that you guys collectively worry about?
Yeah, I do have a few friends that are trying to be on their own and live on their own. And like I said, even with something just above minimum wage, it's hard for them to survive. They constantly have to either go back to where they used to live with their parents, or they have to figure out a way, or they're maxing out credit cards just trying to live, or trying to eat a little food for lunch, or whatever the case is.
It's real talk, just basic needs and not being able to meet them.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any other thoughts you have around, do you think it's important that we have these conversations in Finch and start growing a movement?
Yeah, I think it's important. I think the word of the people will have an effect some way on the government if we fight for what we want. Even if it's just even if we make little changes, it's a difference to a person's living. You could go from making $100 more to like $100 less really quickly. You could lose your job, be on the streets that fast.
So did you know that the little bit that they increased in the minimum wage was because of resident groups across the province pushing? Yeah, so what you're saying in terms of like community and residents mobilizing and pushing against the government, we can point to things that have worked. Yeah.
It's gonna make a difference, honestly. It's $11.40 to $12 is a big difference, a big jump. And even $11.25 to $11.40 still makes some difference, whether it's to buy yourself a little treat or buy yourself a little shoe or just something so you're happy or you're comfortable or you're consistently in good spirit. It makes a difference.
So what do you think about today's event?
I thought it was really good. It had a great turnout. The movie was incredible. It brought me back to my old job working with youth who used to do a lot of temporary work, and knowing that it could be any one of them. So it really went to the heart. And I think we got a good feedback from the crowd. So I thought it went well. Yeah.
So you're a resident. You also work at a local organization that's been a part of. What's been your role there, and what does your organization do?
So I'm the community outreach counselor. So because it's a law school and we're working with law students, the goal is to try to get the law students to be involved in community justice work. And so that's getting them out into the community so that they could do like community lawyering. So being able to advocate for the community, be a voice for the community, and I guess in a bit more diplomatic way at some point. So it's getting them out, it's making them be aware of things like JFAAP, it's having them be aware of the issues that exist, and hopefully giving them the tools that they need to help make a change.
So in particular, CLASP, what did they do? Talk a little bit about the work and CLASP role.
So we have a whole bunch of different legal divisions. So we have a criminal law division, we have a family law division, we have an immigration law division, and then we have administrative law. So administrative law are things like the Human Rights Tribunal, the Landlord and Tenant Board, ODSP related matters or social assistance. And so because we're a student-run clinic, and so students are working under the supervision of licensed lawyers, and so they're being able to work on these cases from the very beginning to the very end, and they're working directly with individuals, so they get to hear about these stories right from the beginning.
So the humanity of
they get to hear from the client's human side of things, and then working with the client. So they have their client work and then they have the community work, and so we're hoping that with both of those experiences they'll be great social justice lawyers.
So CLASP played a key role in the last couple of years of supporting JFAAP with really exploring temp workers, injustice in the workplace. Can you share any of those findings that were surprising to you or affirmed something that you already knew but it's not spoken of on a larger scale?
What was surprising to me was when I speak with people on a daily basis, they always have so many different, unfortunately, negative experiences working in temporary agencies. So we thought that by looking into this a bit more deeper, that we'd be able to kind of get data that would reflect what the community was saying. But in fact, that's not what we got. We got completely the opposite. In fact, according to the Ministry of Labor, they would probably think that nobody's making a claim and everything is doing well. But at the end of the day, people are just scared to make claims or don't want to make claims or don't have the time to make claims. And so I think it's just a way of kind of like addressing these issues and for the ministry to maybe be a bit more proactive as opposed to reactive on different violations, and being mindful of communities that experience precarious work and how they're able to kind of target that to kind of analyze trends and things like that. So that was one of the most surprising things. What wasn't surprising though was, I guess, the ministry, I guess they can't really do much until they get the data in front of them. And so what I want is that hopefully the community can, if they have issues, to really bring it forward, and so that it could spark a bit more of like a fire for the Ministry of Labor to say we have to do something.
And do that kind of systemic push, because if they don't know, then everything's fine and workers are great.
Exactly.
Now,
that's not what we're hearing from residents. It's completely opposite.
so in terms of folks that have precarious status or no status, do you hear anything about that, knowing that our community is made up with people who do have precarious status? Has that surfaced at all?
Yeah, all the time. Like most people that I communicate with are in a precarious status situations. I know people who work multiple part-time jobs or have worked through a temporary agency, and despite working more than one job and that kind of thing, they can't, they're still living paycheck to paycheck. And that's the most unfortunate thing, because I think especially in this community, a lot of people have the notion that people are lazy or just don't want to work or just want to be living off of social assistance, when in fact a lot of people don't want to be on social assistance. They don't want to be monitored. They just want a decent job so that they could pay their bills and live a good life.
So why is it important we do events like this locally in a neighborhood that's marginalized and excluded in so many different ways?
Well, similar to like what we saw in the results, is that people need to, one, understand their rights and know that they can make claims to the Ministry of Labor, and two, bring awareness to it, because you can talk about it, but at the end of the day, numbers is really what makes the difference, and data is what really speaks to especially government people. So if you have claims, file them.
So what was your take on, what was tonight's event about?
So tonight's event was looking at temporary workers and like the effects on their health, their income, their families, and kind of the situations that they're in, like the precarious kind of situation that they're in.
Do you think, what are your thoughts around having conversations around good jobs, keeping jobs local, people being able to get permanent jobs with 6 days? Why is it important that these conversations are happening in our neighborhood?
Well, because like they said, there's like over 200 temp agencies, and a lot of people are working under conditions that they shouldn't be. Like Ontario has labor rights, and people should be working under better conditions. They should be able to take sick days. They should be getting a basic minimum wage. They should be able to, get WSIB if they got injured on work. But when people are working with temp agencies and in these kinds of situations that are not stable, they don't access this. And we find that most people who are living in poverty, who are perhaps living without status, who are newcomers, are often the ones who are taking these positions, and they don't know often what their rights are, or they can access kind of a better standard of work.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about Mayworks.
So this is our 32nd year, and we're one of the only festivals that I know of that really center the intersection between art, politics, and labor.
Okay.
Yeah.
So break that down for those who kind of don't make that connection.
Well, one of the connections is a lot of the art that you see is in these fancy museums, and you hear about pieces selling for millions of dollars, and we don't even know who the people are who are making this art. But Mayworks is about real people's art. So it's about people being able to make their own film, people making their own plays, people making their own music, people sharing that, and it having some kind of meaning that resonates with people's everyday life. Yeah.
And why is that an important intersect in terms of art, labor, and like social, like being politicized?
I think because art is meant to be about life, right? And these are everyday life issues. Today we were seeing a film about temporary work, about the dangers of work, about the greed of corporations. And if we can have art that shines a light on that, that allows us to have conversations, that allows us to reflect, that allows us to imagine things differently, then that's a powerful tool that we can use.
So why is it important that we have these conversations locally in Jane and Finch? And the film is a film that was done in the States.
Right.
But I feel like there's so many parallels. So I guess that's a 2 question.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me bite off the first part. Why is it relevant to Jane and Finch? Well, we heard there's over 50 temporary agencies. 200 temporary agencies that prey on people in Jane and Finch, right? And so that's exploitation. We have to name it. We have to shame it. And then we have to organize to try to fight for our rights, right? And so we also talked about the $15 in fairness campaign. We should have a living wage in the city of Toronto, and temporary agencies shouldn't be able to undercut people's standard of living because they're desperate or they're hungry.
So in terms of having these conversations locally in Finch, why would Mayworks? Isn't that a downtown organ? Like, why are these collaborations and partnerships so important?
1, because there's so much beauty and energy in Jane and Finch. 2, because people are directly affected in Jane and Finch. These are issues that are near and dear to people's hearts, and that's why we have to have the conversations here, right? We want to organize together, so it means meeting people where they're at. And then we also talk about organizing. Let's come downtown. Let's go to the provincial legislature. Let's make a lot of noise, and let's change some laws. Yeah.
Is there any final words you'd like to share before we wrap up?
Just a big thank you to Jane and Finch Action Against Poverty for collaborating with Mayworks, and invite people to check out our website, mayworks.ca, to learn more about our work.